Good evening, everyone. My name's Alistair, and I've been asked to give this week's evening reflection. At work, recently I've been getting increasingly frustrated by how long a work in progress has been taking. Last year, before Christmas, we started rebuilding our offices, and this is just one item in a list of other projects that are ongoing. And here we are almost a year later, and our offices still aren't done. My office itself is still temporary, and my desk is another chair in my office. The heating was only switched on for the first time today, and yes, it's been cold the last couple of weeks. And it just feels like everything's in a constant state of flux. Kind of makes me think about work in progress, and ultimately what you keep on telling yourself throughout it is that the end is worth it. It will be worth it for the new offices we've got at work. It will be worth it for this. The current pain is worth it in a work in progress, or so you hope. So it got me thinking about other works in progress. My wife, Sabrina, you might not know, but she quills, which is making things out of little paper strips. So those green and blue things are the start of the quilling progress, and the work in progress would look a bit like what's in that box in the photo, just little things that haven't quite made it to the finished product, or projects that are part way through. One of our biggest works in progress is this, a chess set that she designed and is making herself. This was meant to be a Christmas present for my 2019 Christmas. Unfortunately, children, COVID, everything else got in the way, so it's still a work in progress, but you can clearly see that it is beautiful, and although it'll take a lot longer to finish, the work in progress will be worth it. One of my works in progress looks a bit like this at the back. It's a cross stitch that has been ongoing for over 10 years now. I'm not very artistic and I don't get much time, but the hope is that when it finishes, it will look very beautiful. It's not finished yet. You can see I've only just started putting some lines in the house, so there's still a long way to go. But what you tend to find is that actually the longest works in progress tend to be the most beautiful at the end. It tends to be worth it. There's a lot more work involved in getting in that end result. This is a photograph of St. Mark's Basilica in Venice. Sabrina and I visited there recently, and this took 41, the actual basilica itself took 41 years to build. Almost 200 years later, in the 1290s, they were still applying mosaics throughout the building, and that's what you can see there is all the mosaics. Then in the 1400s there was 2 fires, so then they had to do repair work. Then in the early 1700s, there was so many repairs required to the mosaics that they specifically hired somebody to oversee this whole project of repairs. Then in 1867, there was still more restoration and repairs required, that they actually entered into a specific contract. What you actually can't see in this photo, and we didn't take a photo of, is that just round one of those corners, there's still ongoing repairs to some of the mosaics. And that's actually what's interesting to me about works in progress, is that people always think, well, what is the end? Is the end worth it? And actually, the question is, do any of these things actually have an end? St. Mark's Basilica will constantly need repaired, restored. Office developments will need eventually repainted, redecorated, or redone up altogether. So what does that mean for us personally, individually, as Christians? Well, it does make me think of the fruit of the Spirit, which, as you know, we're going through a study on at the moment. Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. You will all have heard of this. Well, when I was kind of presenting this to the youth, one thing that I highlighted is that fruit grows. It grows to maturation. So as Christians, the evidence that we should see, what should set us apart from others, because anybody can have self-control, anybody can be good, but what sets us apart as Christians is that maturation process, that we're growing throughout our lives in all these fruit. It's the longest work in progress we're ever going to have, because it's a work in progress that takes the whole of our life. Is there an end to it? Is it going to be like St. Mark's Basilica, where there's just, no end in sight? Well, ultimately, no. We reach that full maturation in heaven with Christ in the presence of God. And that's just a wonderful thought. And is the work in progress, as frustrating as it might be throughout our lives, that we're never there yet? Something always just feels wrong. It feels hard. There's work to do. There's maturation to do. There's stitches to undo and then redo in our lives. Ultimately, the end is more than worth it. All these beautiful works in progress that we see come to completion and we think that's more wonderful, it pales into insignificance compared to what that final product will look like when we're in heaven with Christ. So I hope that can encourage you, that if you're struggling with frustration during your maturation process, that you know that every other Christian is going through that with you. But know with surety that the end is more than worth it.